Hi, welcome to another edition of Legal Quilts. It seems like we just had one. We did. I got a little off track and missed a week, and so that's why we had an episode last week. But now I want to get back on track, so we've got an episode this week. This week we're going to continue with Scrap Summer. And this one comes from, this is a pattern called Lozenzes, and it's at Quiltville's by Bonnie Hunter. It's one of her Leader and Ender projects. And it's a free pattern, but I'm still not going to show the complete how to put the quilt together and all those details, because even if it's free, she deserves the people going to her website and getting the pattern and giving her the acknowledgement. It's a pretty simple pattern. It just involves rectangles and squares. That's it. The squares are your background. The rectangles are scraps of fabric. She has the dimensions of what you need for the rectangles and the squares on her website and on the pattern. She also gives you the math if you want to do different sizes than what she gives, which makes life a lot easier. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It uses a technique that we call flip and switch. Flip and cut. And it's pretty simple. You just take one of the small squares, and you lay it on one of the corners, like this, of the rectangle. And then it's stitch and flip. That's the name. I knew I'd remember it eventually. Let's call it corner squares. And you want to make sure that top, you see I got a little bit of fringe in there, you want to make sure the top of the fabric is actually along the top there. And then you're going to take your brilliant binding tool, because that has your 45-degree angle on it, so you'll get it perfect. And you just draw a line using your marking pen or your chalk or whatever you prefer. You're on the wrong sides anyway. So you draw a line right there, okay? And do this on both of them. And again, it's right sides together. I always mess that up with pillowcases because that one's wrong sides together and I never get it right. Again, with your brilliant binding tool. I don't usually mark, because you're just going from corner to corner, and apparently my quilting superpower is I can do 45-degree. I can eyeball and by hand, with no guidance, do a 45-degree angle stitch. And you bring them over and you sew them. And this is great for chain piecing. I'm only doing 2 today, but you can set up a whole bunch of them. Let me move this a little bit so you can see what I'm sewing here. Okay. See if we can see the sewing machine a little bit better. There we go. All right. Again, you can do a whole bunch of these at once and do chain piecing. So you put the first one in and you just sew along that line. Just sew along that line that you just drew, corner to corner, and you slide the next one in without sewing them together. You slide the next one in, and you keep going until you got your whole chain done. Again, I'm only doing 2, so we're not here all day. And then you just snip them apart, snip off your end threads here, and then you're going to take your scissors and cut just short of that line. You don't want to cut on the line. You want to cut about 1/4 inch from that line. See, it's about 1/4 of an inch. And then it flips over so that you see so that you kind of get that point there. And you do the same thing here. And you do it with all the ones you've just sewn, just 1/4 of an inch there. And that's why it's stitch and flip. And you get rid of that excess, and some people save these for other projects. I'm getting to the point where I'm like, at some point you have to declare you're done with fabric and you can't save it for anything else. Now, we all know I'm not a big proponent of pressing as you go. You've heard my story you've heard me talk about this before, where it's just like, look, our ancestors, as they were crossing the prairie in Conestoga wagons, were not heating up their irons in order to stop and press their pieces as they were going along. But for this, you really do have to. After you do each corner and you've cut them apart, you've done the stitch and flip, you really do have to iron these down, and I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, so it doesn't take much. You just iron them down. This is where that wool pressing mat comes in handy. Now, I use a cordless iron, although it's got the base that can still be attached if you really want a cord bothering you and getting in your way. Because again, left-handed, cords get in my way. And that's how you do it. You then just do this same thing for all four corners. Is you then put another square over here, draw the line the other way. All right, so you're going to do it this way this time. Same thing, stitch and flip. And that's why you have to press them, because if you don't, and this is flopping over, you're liable to sew that down, and then when you cut it, you'll have cut off part of your piece. This is the only time I believe in pressing. So then you wind up with pieces when you're all done. And you can see I'm doing this in scraps, so all my brown corner pieces don't match, are different. And the reason I'm using brown is because I have a lot of brown scraps left over from when I did a beach quilt for a friend a while ago. The lovely king size beach bargello. It was part blue and part brown. So I've got all these browns left over for sand, and this is a great way to use up some of your bigger pieces for the larger squares, and then to cut off the color you want for your background. You can do any color you want in your background. I just decided to do it. You want something more neutral for your background, and I just decided to do it with brown. So you get the pieces, they look like this when they're done. You see you do it on all four corners. So you kind of get a point here, and you get this nice little lozenge shape. If you do it on a square instead of a rectangle, you get an octagon. It's called snowball. So keep that in mind, that you can vary this. The stitch and flip gets found in a lot of places, but it's how you can make squares a little different. And then when you're all done, when you're ready to put the quilt together, you just line up your pieces and you sew them across. You sew them across. Let's see, why is that not lining up right? There we go. And you sew them using your 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you've got your rows. You make as many of these as you want across, and up and, and for as many rows as you want. So you decide how many rows across, decide how many across you want and how many rows down, and then you just start making them. Like I said, I haven't worked on this for a while, so I'm a little, all right. But that's it. That's the end piece, and you just sew them together. And of course, as you're sewing them together, then the brown pieces, your background, will work together to create a secondary pattern where they come together. I always love quilts with secondary patterns. So that's it's a great, like I said, scrap one, great way to use up your smaller neutrals that you want to use in the background. You can use, as you can see, this one has a bigger print. You can use your big prints for your rectangles because they'll show up better, and they won't overwhelm because you're going to have so much going on. Let me see if I can show you kind of how the secondary pattern would wind up. That one's not actually going to. I kind of moved that one a little the wrong way, but you can see when you come together with the rows, you're going to have a kind of square piece there in the middle where they all come together. So this is a really nice, pretty one. Like I said, you can go to Quiltville by Bonnie Hunter. Just Google Quiltville. And you can find this pattern under free patterns. It's a leader and ender, which she did these where you were just putting them through as you were working on another quilt. I don't do leader and enders most because I always forget to do them. And having other stuff around while I'm working just creates a bigger mess. But it's a nice quick pattern, and again, it's a great scrap one for our Scrap Summer Challenge. So that's it for this episode. The products I used today, the tools and stuff, I'm going to have affiliate links in those. Don't forget to buy through my affiliate links. I really appreciate it. If you can't get them at the local quilt shop, please come through and use them at my Amazon. Again, here is the QR code. Let's see. Oops. Everything fell there. Here's the QR code that has all my social media and also all my social media, links to the web store, all that stuff. And please go to Legal Quilts at Facebook. Just search for Legal Quilts on Facebook. One of the things I wanted to do this year was to work on a difficult pattern that I had not attempted before and that had been sitting around for a while. I've got a few choices up there. Go there, vote. The one that everybody picks, the most picked is the one I'm going to do. And you can do ranked choice voting. You can say, I like this one better, but hey, I could live with this one. I don't care. Just go to Facebook and let me know which ones you want, and I will make it hopefully before January, and y'all can see the final results. So thank you, and see you next time.